Alrighty. Testing. I think I've got everything set up right. Let me turn down this music a little bit. Okay, this should be everything. Today we're not super organized like we have been. Don't really have a specific project in mind. I just want to go over some things. Maybe sketch a character and go over a project. That's kind of my plan for the day. So, just gonna keep listening, making sure my mic's actually connected properly. Gotta listen to my own voice through the stream preview. Blub, blub, blub. Man, I got a can of sardines next to me, absolutely calling my name. I don't have a fork or any way to drain it though, so I've gotta hold strong. I know it's a tough battle. Hello, welcome in. Wow, welcome. That's a lot more people than I was expecting. How's it going? It's nice to have some people showing up. For those of you who don't know, I'm Jickers. I am no one. I've never worked on any projects that are big in any sort of way, but I have been drawing since I was able to hold a pen or pencil, and I like to share my art with other people because I like to make people happy. So today that's exactly what we're doing. I've got a world I'd like to share with you, because last time I streamed I was talking about a game I'm working on, and that is still in progress, but I thought, you know what, why not explore something else? So I guess with that, someday I'll get all this formatted so you don't have to see all of my ugly Critta stuff. Yeah, we're gonna start. I guess we can start with what the world is. Let me transition our music to the proper tune. Right now it's 5 p.m., which is still 5 p.m. of course, but I want to get the all the Wii channel music like we usually have. I don't want to miss out on all that, you know? Beautiful. Alright. Let's get started. Okay. Yo, Rios. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining in. Okay. Let me see. So, I probably should open documents before, but that's fine. Now you guys get to see my horribly organized stuff. So, Beastbane. Let's just start with a steaming bullet. Beastbane. It's a world with cool magical things in it. Like, look at this. This is... which one is this? I change them so often. This is bird people. They're called pike. P-A-I-C. They are semi-aquatic. They stand about like 8 to 9 feet tall at the top of the head. They have sexual dimorphism, so the males have much bigger heads and hands and fighty bits, and the females have less, still just as bright, but they've got this beautiful little organ here, which is... I have another sketch. Look at this. I'm real fancy today. It's called Brood Patch. Brood Patch, its functionality is, well, firstly, it's an analog for boobies. Let's just get that out there. But for these specifically, it has a reproductive purpose in that it signals receptiveness, just nice and easy. But also, it has kind of an adhesive, almost kind of like a eggshell organs on the inside of it, are all lining the middle of it. And when a lady lays her egg, which they only ever lay one at once, she'll hold it in this pouch and it'll kind of inflate with blood and just become this big, thick, like a tongue almost. And it'll kind of wrap and form around the egg, leaving just enough for oxygen exchange, but hold it in place, kind of like a built-in baby carrier. And so she's deeply connected to her baby during all points of development, which is awesome, and is able to continue working and hunting and gardening and all that stuff while she is quote-unquote pregnant, in human terms, of course. So that is that. Obviously, babies, it's pretty ugly. They're adorable, though. I like them a lot. There's been a lot of changes with these guys. Let me think. So they started... Let's just do a sketch of it. So they started... I was trying to join an exclusive all the cool kids roleplay on an art program for the Nintendo 3DS. This is so stupid. Called Colors Live. I think there's a Switch version now, actually. Last time I visited the website, it was just as toxic as I remember. But Colors Live, it had a group of, like 10 artists who all had over 200 followers, which was a lot on Colors Live. And they would each draw dragons. All of them were dragon art channels. And they had this big, like, I'm trying to think of a good way to describe it. It was this massive, overarching roleplay story with like 24 characters and all this really complicated stuff. Absolute nightmare to try to keep track of for the fans of it, of which I was one. But they'd occasionally add a new player when if someone got enough followers and became cool enough, they'd let you join, and then it became even more confusing to follow. So in my little, I think I had 40 at the highest back then, and I was maybe 10. I don't know, probably close to that, maybe 10. In my delusions of grandeur, I was just positive that I was cool enough to join. It's called Solitamir's Keys. That was the name of the roleplay. You can probably actually find it if you go to colorslive.com and just proceed to the gallery and look up Solitamir's Keys. You should be able to find the old 3DS drawn roleplay pages and see some of the comments from the accounts that are still there. It was a hoot. So I tried to join this thing because I thought I was really cool, and I started with this character who I'll sketch him real quick after this. So this is how the Pike started. They started as, like, let's be honest, it was a complete ripoff of the Deadly Natter. Some of the older designs had even horns on their noses. But they are different because they're birds. So, just like big wings. I don't really want to take up the whole page with it. So that's what they looked like, and now they look like herons with Jim Henson teeth. Which I think is a much cooler look. And they also look kind of dopey sometimes, which is really fun to draw. Gotta lock in. So the character I tried to join that roleplay with, it's so bad. His name was Frizzlock von Waterdeep or something like that, and he was a freaking plesiosaurus or something. Let me see if I can draw him real quick. He's actually kind of a fun design, but he was just a plesiosaur with a big Chad chin and 4 eyes. Or sorry, 3 eyes, because this one had a scar over it. That's right, because he had to have a scar because I was cool. Scar over that part of his head. Big, bulky neck. He's really fun to draw, honestly. I do enjoy drawing this character. Maybe I'll use him in something later. But I tried to... Just picture this. It's a little 10-year-old kid. The drawing was terrible, and it was traced over a trace of another plesiosaurus style monster that I'd drawn. So it was real bad. And I requested to join this hoity-toity roleplay group with all these cool flying dragons as a plesiosaurus. Needless to say, I was immediately turned down, and in my vengeful state, I decided to try and start a new roleplay, and the next big thing on Colors Live. You know, I needed to be like the cool guy who dethroned Solitamir's Keys. And so I started working on the Dragon Gym. And 11 years later, I still have that world, and it's like my main fantasy plug. Whenever I have an idea for something fantasy-ish, I just like stick it in the what is now the Beastbane world, because it went through a couple of name changes over time, just because I realized Dragon Gym was kind of cringy. So there's been lots of different adjustments to it since then, but that's basically the origin story. It's just little 10-year-old Jickers was angry that they wouldn't let me roleplay as a plesiosaurus, so made a new one. And of course, I didn't want to play as a Plesiosaurus in my own, because I realized that was not particularly cool. So I came up with this guy. His name was Dane. Or no, his name was Darren back then. And all my siblings made fun of me because that seemed like such a dumb name for a cool dragon. But I liked it. I thought it was really cool. Now he is Dane. Let me see if I can draw him. Maybe if my hand can be still. So I guess I'll go over some of the basic premises of Beastbane real quick. So the world is about Earth-sized, Earth-related creatures and all that. So there's birds and bugs and all that crap. Nothing too crazy. But it's magical, because what's a fantasy story without magic? The planet itself is built upon the corpse of a god, which I learned after I made it that that's apparently a really common trope, but I still like it. And so because of that, and because gods can't, in this setting, can't really truly die, this is like blood vessels have formed all throughout the Earth's crust. Or it's Shin is the name of the planet. All throughout Shin's crust that contain the lifeblood of this god. And that lifeblood being, well, the blood of a god is super potent for magical things and kind of affects nature in weird ways, and it's a hoot. And different people groups people have learned how to take advantage of it in different ways. But some of them haven't really. The pike of all of the races have definitely figured it out the best. They've got the most consistent and practical uses for it, I guess, maybe. They have the deepest understanding, that's a better way to say it. So they are, they're also kind of exclusionist, though. They live way far away, often like a kind of an Indonesia analog, really far from the other intelligent races, and they don't really like anyone else. So they just kind of do their own things, their own little geopolitics and all that crap, and don't really bother anyone. But they've got all their own clan wars and class systems and all that garbage. The people group that Dane's from is a group of fishermen, mostly fishermen and hunters. And so they're the Aonun, which is what these people are. You can see up here, which you can't see because I covered the taskbar with my overlay. But Aonun, A-O-N-U-N. And so they're the smallest of the pike people groups, which, I mean, they're still 8 feet tall at the top of the head, so it's not necessarily short by any means. They kind of got the short end of the stick amongst all the people. There's 3 main, like, genotypes of them. They got the short end of the stick. Let's open up another picture of... This is a little outdated. That's really outdated. Here we go. So here's another one. I'm going to open both of these, just so I don't have to keep going back and forth. Alright, so. This is Aonun. They're very slender, kind of disproportionate. They got much longer arms compared to their bodies, more webbed feet, all the makings of more predatory. These are the Nobone, and they are farmers and gatherers and travelers and all that. And so they farm and garden and travel. They live on the northernmost islands, which are closest to the equator, and have a lot of volcanic activity, so they're able to grow lots of funky crops all year round. And they've perfected mushrooms and other fungi, slime molds, all these weird things that you'd never want to eat. They They grow it and they eat it. They've got different tusks. They've kind of got a dog-shaped head, or more like a dodo, maybe. But their tusks come out and they diverge at the tips instead of coming together like in the ANN. I don't really have a reason for that. I just thought it looked cool. And they've got different skin colors and body colors as well, mostly just to differentiate them in my own head. Then the last one, these are the Dagon. And they are a little different. So the Dagon are the largest of the whole group. They stand maybe like 12 feet tall max. They also have longer necks, so it's kind of, they're not really that much taller actually comparing the bodies. They've got more like a rooster tail, which, yeah, they got more of a rooster tail instead of kind of the long, slender, rowing tail like these guys. And they're very ornate and showy, and their tusks aren't really useful for anything, because the bone, they use these for as essentially a third hand, like a crow would. And the same with the Nobon. These guys are all just pure show and might. They're mighty. They're very crafty. They've got lots of cultural differences that make them just difficult to deal with. They're just annoying. But they've usurped power from the other groups, so they can't really do anything about that, you know? They usually come in some sort of orange or red or yellow shade. And they've got this speckled... I mean, the main inspiration is Secretary Bird for these guys' colors. It felt so perfect. Secretary Bird, a little bit of snowy owl, and the fade on the neck there. And lots of just black and white all over their bodies. So that's the pike. They don't really wear clothes, per se. Sometimes... Ooh, where's my picture? There you are. Sometimes the ladies will wear like a wrap sort of thing. Like a wrap. Yeah, there we go. Just over their brood patch. Just because it's a private area for them, you know. They like to protect it, which makes sense. But otherwise, they've got feathers over all their other stuff, so they don't really need that. Sometimes there are... I wish I had pictures of this one. I think I have like physical sketches, ink sketches of this. But there's some that have mostly elders and like experienced hunters. They'll have boreholes in their teeth, just from not really from anything. They just bore holes in their teeth. Let's see if we can do it. And they'll have piercings through it, essentially, because the rest of their skin on their face is pretty sensitive. And obviously, they're gonna do piercings. They do all sorts of stuff just for vanity's sake. But maybe this one's got like a band with tassels. Yeah, like that. They do all sorts of weird things to their teeth. Probably filigree or something. Maybe carving patterns to match their skin. All sorts of stuff. Because the teeth don't really have any feeling. It's more like a tusk, like on an elephant, where they don't really feel it. Oh wait, it's not elephants, it's a rhinoceros that does that, so that doesn't really fit. But, you know, it's fantasy, so it doesn't matter. So that is the pike. This is significantly less structured than I was intending it to be, but you know what? You gotta live with what you get. Thank y'all for sticking by, I appreciate it. So, the pike, let's close all these. I do not want to save the change. Nope. Let me open up the lineals. So these, they're not quite as final. So lineals are kind of like grasshoppers in a way. They're a large, stand about 5 to 6 foot on average. kind of neotenal grasshopper species. So they retain some traits of a larval grasshopper, but as they age and as they molt, they kind of fit into a caste system, almost like ants. So I toyed with making them just ants or wasps at first, but I wasn't a huge fan of how that worked anatomically, and it felt a little bit derivative, because I've seen other people do ant people. But also, grasshoppers and locusts do have very unique social structures to base a society off of, so I think it works. They've got very soft bodies on the belly. The back is partially keratinized, kind of like a shrimp. It's kind of flexible, and they've got the soft underbelly. I don't have a scale with a human one, so let's just say this is a dude. Very narrow man. That's about how tall they are. So their head gets to about shoulder height on most average people, and then their antennae go up past your head. They got 3 sets of legs, obviously. Often, I have a lot less images than I thought I'd. Often they will walk around kind of like a centaur. So the primary legs, which are the kind of stumpy ones on the bottom, and then the secondary legs will kind of work together. They're inconvenient sizes, so they don't sit perfectly straight, but that's how they get places fast as they do this. And then all that. Let me see, it need to be much lower down. There we go. And I can't draw today. Beautiful. There you go. And they'll kind of gallop around like that. But then when they do that, they're the size of a dog, maybe. Maybe a large dog. One of my favorite things with making these guys was studying the anatomy of an insect's mouth. Legitimately, that was so much fun, because there's so many little pieces going on in here, and I don't remember any of their names, of course, but they've got mandibles, which we all know. They've got these, which are projections of the labium, but they're not the labium. I don't remember exactly what the term was. Then we got the labium, which is way down here. It's kind of like the bottom of their mouth. They're their equivalent of a bottom jaw. And inside they've got like these wheels of grinding teeth, which is really cool. I never knew about that. This is the labrum right here, which is just like their upper lip. And there's a bunch of thin skin, and this is in real bugs too. There's a bunch of thin skin stretched between all these parts, so that forms a seal. So they can close their mouths, and I guess they couldn't hold their breath because they don't have lungs, but they can close their mouth and hold water in it, or squirt water or something like that pretty easily. This is one of those, because like you see with the height I showed you, I'm able to render those fantasy style pretty dang easily most of the time. But with the lineals, something about the way I've proportioned them makes them very difficult to draw realistically. This was my last attempt. I was going for a more painterly style with this one. But it's very difficult. Like, I can draw that this is one of their livestock animals. It's a stick bug cow, essentially. And I was able to do this, like, fairly easily, nice and realistic, like. I think it's just something about their face shape, whenever I see them, makes me want to draw them like an anime character. And I should probably try and break that habit, because it's annoying sometimes. But the lineals are very fun, and I draw them so little because they frustrate me so much to draw, but they really are fun. Let's pull out my actual brush. How about that? So they have 3 distinct phases to their life. They have normal. I'm gonna get rid of you. You're ugly. Normal phase, which is just what you saw before, kind of average citizen. And in this phase, they are mostly just kind of just do whatever. They're normal citizens, you know? So they buy, sell, trade, all that stuff. And from normal citizen, depending on certain hormonal circumstances, how many other dominant lineals there are in their proximity, they can pupate into more forms. So I'm not going to finish that right now. So from here, yeah, my chat's like 3 minutes behind, but yes, it's like the Vikings carved teeth. That's exactly what my inspiration was. So start as a citizen from neoteny once they grow up, and in this state they're infertile and very androgynous. There are males and females within the species, but there's not really a distinction between them genetically or physically. After this, they can progress to the mare stage. And I call it the mare because a lot of their societal structure is very reminiscent of like human politics. And that wasn't on purpose, but it ended up feeling like a small town congressional race. Thanks, Rios. Just the way that all their politics and like society worked. So I decided to go with it because I thought it was funny. So mare, they've got similar build to a citizen, except their mandibles are usually a little bit more extreme. Male or female, so the mare can be either sex. They've got big munchies, you know, and their little appendages, all the stuff. And in addition to that, they've got, let's see if I can do it right, much wider and stockier shapes, as you can see, and some kind of spines kind of built up along the edges, where on a lineal, the spine or this edge along the back would be kind of just a sharp edge. On the mares, it starts to get like spines on it. I probably should have done this with a mirror modifier, but who cares? And their limbs as well also get a little bit spiny. But besides that, they do bulk up a little bit. I'm trying not to take up too much space because I still gotta draw the monarch. After this phase, though, they have one more, and as I said, it's called the monarch. Or king or queen or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Because either sex can become a monarch. And to become a monarch, you have to kind of just be exposed to a ton of other mares for an extended period of time. And all the instinctual hormones just kind of balance each other out. And whoever's got the strongest ones ends up evolving, essentially. It's like Pokemon. And the process to molt into a monarch is very, very energy intensive. And some lineals don't survive through it. So it's a very intense process. But the ones that do are rewarded with a complete and total, and this is again where I get towards cartoons again. Complete and total and anatomical rework, essentially. So, they widen a little bit more, just like they did when they became a mare. There we go. Big, wide labrum. Their mandibles obviously probably go way crazy. Let's just do something fun for now. All their little things. All that stuff, you know, the basic. They get these big, big spines all along their sides like this. And their spiracles kind of just, they stay roughly the same. Their arms get big and hulking. And this is a cartoon exaggeration of kind of how it would be. And their pheromones become incredibly strong because all lineals are kind of constantly producing a cloud of pheromones, which can make mammals like us have allergic reactions sometimes, depending on how strong the pheromones are, and sometimes the pheromones can be psychoactive to mammals and actually cause hallucinations or other sorts of like an easily influenceable mind state, which makes lineal merchants a little bit kind of, humans are usually pretty wary of them, you know, because there's always a chance that they're being mind controlled in a way. Let's see, how are we? Did I turn autoplay? I turned autoplay off on this. All right, let's restart that. Beauty. All right, back to the races. So, Monarch, they're big. They got horns and crowns, and I don't know if any of y'all have seen that the katydid. You've probably seen it. That looks like it's got this giant crown on. That's kind of what they turn into. So they're covered, absolutely covered in spikes. And it's probably not very easy to live as a monarch, honestly, because their underside's still soft. All that's still soft. So they gotta be really careful not to pop themselves. But they got strong pheromones, and kind of just, in the presence of a monarch, no mares can continue to metamorphose. They stop right there. And that presence, what I said is the presence of a monarch, that extends for miles, depending on wind and all that stuff. And so there is only one monarch per region of the globe in the lineals territory. So it balances itself pretty well. And usually the children of, because after you become a monarch, you become infertile again. I should have mentioned this, the only window of fertility for a lineal is during their mareship. And during that time, often female mares will try to have as many children as possible, just to increase their chances of having a royal family. Because once the monarch dies, the mare with the most exposure to the monarch pheromones, once they stop being produced, is more likely than its peers to become the next monarch, because it's already accustomed to having them in its system. Now, the competition still works the same way as it did, and it's still very, very possible for the prince to not become a monarch. But it's not common. And so most lineals who reach royalty already have at least one or two children kind of picked out, you know? Let's just get that. Could be cleaner, but that's basically... Man, I feel like a child right now. Yikes, that's bad. That's basically kind of what happens. And there is, however, an additional, and I'm not even going to try to paint this one, so I'll just pull up this picture of their faces. There's an additional phase to their life cycle that happens kind of in a Gyarados King style, for anyone who's played Zelda, where just once every blue moon, there's not really any predictable cycle for it, but it's kind of every 100 to 150-ish years, a monarch sheds one last time, which usually there's 4 to 5 molts per life stage before they move on to the next one, except for the monarch is just one. That's usually their final molt. But sometimes a monarch will molt one last time, and it will become an emperor. And an emperor they're like total genetic freaks. They produce so many hormones of all types, both sexes of hormones. Even if it's a male or a female, it just kind of overproduces everything. And when there's an emperor present in a colony, the entire colony kind of becomes drugged in a way, but it's not like a woozy drugging like us. It's more like constant caffeine, a little bit. And so they're jacked up on hormones all the time and making lots of babies and causing lots of wars and all that stuff. Their minds are racing, so they're inventing new stuff during this period. And generally, when there's an emperor present, it's a time of great prosperity for the lineal people. Population booms and all that stuff. So an emperor is usually an omen of good luck. But what causes an emperor to happen is usually some sort of prolonged stress before molting into a king or a monarch. And so if a mayor is under physical or I guess mental stress could also be part of this. If they're under that kind of stress before they molt, that can lead to a failed molt into a monarch just in the first place. So usually they die. But if they survive through the monarch phase, it can trigger that genetic pathway that turns them into an emperor. Because in their related non-sapient species of actual grasshopper, not in the real world, just in this story, in that species, the emperor is inevitable. Every single one of them becomes an emperor at some point, and it's just the end of the life, and that marks time for the colony to move on and become a locust swarm, essentially. With the lineals, they're slightly more civilized than that, so they don't really like swarm in the same way. But when there is an emperor, they tend to skirmish more with their friends, or usually not friends, but they tend to skirmish more with other tribes and explore and do all that stuff. Akin to a locust swarm, sort of. That'd probably be the best way to describe it. The emperor does not live very long. Usually they live another 2 to 3 years maximum on top of a 70, 80-ish year lifespan. And their existence is not particularly comfortable because their body hasn't been supposed to do that in a very, very many thousands of years. It's an ancient genetic pathway being unlocked. But the emperors, they sometimes... Let me see if I can draw one. Let me see if my my skills have awakened again. The emperors, they tend to kind of be much more bug-like. So, let me see. I don't know if I've actually ever drawn one, now that I think about it. Let's try... Yeah, I like this. They kind of like... Because the normal ones are very neotenal, which means shaped like a baby, for those who don't know. That's like an axolotl is a good example of that, where they stay as a salamander larvae their entire life. They never grow up. That's kind of what they do. That's what humans do also. That's pretty cool. They stay like a monkey baby their entire lives. Fun fact. But the lineals are very neotenal. They keep that kind of baby beetle head and baby beetle body their whole life. But once they metamorphosize into an emperor, if it happens, all bets are off. And they kind of just look like a big, beefy-ass grasshopper. Pardon my French. Very, very fun. Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually drawn one before, now that I think about it. So, you're exploring this with me. I think maybe they should have stag beetle. Kinda. Yeah, there we go. I like that. And little primary arms down here, like the rest of their relatives. There we go. Then they're pretty. I'd expect they'd probably be about shoulder height at the top of the head, like with the normal lineals and the mares, except in this, I don't have a reference of bug leg anatomy. That's my problem. Alright. So they'd be about the same height physically as a normal one compared to a human, but they're massively bulky horizontally. So that changes some things, of course. Man, this is not a good day for art in the Jickers household. But we shall survive. Not every day is shining star. I'm not sure how much I love that, but the idea gets across enough, right? You get it. They just become a big millipede creature, grasshopper, beetle, terror of the night. So that's the lineals. Big silly bug people. They utilize magic just like the pike do in various different ways, and I'll probably do a separate stream and or video talking about the magic. They utilize magic. They mostly focus on things related to light and energy, whereas the pike are more concerned with biological, like self-editing and shape-shifting sort of stuff. I should probably stop doing that. They're more physics-based, would be a good way to say it. All of them? Okay, there we go. I'm gonna delete all... probably not, actually. Alright, so let me see what's next. I don't think I have any... Do I have digital drawings of them? Okay, I have one. So these guys, they're really hard for me to pin down. These are the Gunung. And they are subterranean toad people, essentially. You can probably see. This drawing, this is... Oh, this has got to be like 3 or 4 years old now. I was trying to mimic a colored pencil piece that I did of a lineal to see if I could do it digitally. And I think it turned out okay. So the Gunung, they are... Maybe this... Yeah, I never finished this thing, but this got their anatomy right. Their anatomy is largely based on the monkey tree frog. So waxy monkey, giant monkey, all those. They're very bulky and square because they've got these long venom glands along their back. And they got these really beefy front limbs and super long, elegant rear legs, but they don't jump. That's what I love about them. Waxy monkey tree frog, look it up. They don't jump. They just kind of crawl around in the canopy. Oh, I guess I can open these. Nah, those are old. What's this? Oh, here's some. I remember when I was experimenting with this too, making them kind of much more animalistic. But they gotta have a little bit of brain, you know?